Shabbat shalom, everyone. In this season, when we're in the midst of counting the Omer, I've been thinking a lot about the many ways that we count time. Time is ever present, yet somehow remarkably elusive. There are days that pass like minutes, and minutes that seem like hours, and years that flash by at the speed of light, despite the fact that we struggled through a month here or there. Many of us find ourselves scratching our heads as we write the new Gregorian year on a check or on a letter. Yes, some of us still do write checks. Or when we notice the new Gregorian year pop up somewhere. As Jews, we impose an additional calendar on top of the Gregorian, such that we are now 11 days into counting the Omer and 39 days before Shavuot. In 3 days, we'll mark Yom HaShoah and recall events that took place over many years and concluded 79 years ago. Then there are those life-altering events, collective and personal, that change the way we count and experience time and the way we experience ourselves in the world. Before the advent of the internet, after 9/11, after the storming of the Capitol, those are just some of the collective ones that many of us remember. There are also personal ones. They have a different kind of power, a different resonance. They remain our own tried and true timetables, but they aren't necessarily shared with many others. Before my diagnosis, before I went off to school, before he was called into the reserves, before they transitioned, and those that begin with the word after. After he lost his job, after the stroke, after the death of. It is those words, after the death, that are the name of this week's Torah portion, Acharei mot in Hebrew. After the death of his 2 sons, Aaron's world, as he had known it, ended. As we read in Parshat Shmini a number of weeks ago, Aaron's world was rocked to its core. As Aaron's sons attempted to draw near to God, the words used in this week's Parsha to describe the event, they were consumed by fire. Aaron and those 2 sons had just been ordained as priests, entrusted with making sacrifices on behalf of the entire community. Their present and their future, and the present of the future of the community, changed. They were bound together. Prior to the death, they had held so much promise. And then, in the blink of an eye, they were gone. The abruptness, the finality, the horror of those deaths rendered Aaron speechless. In a few terse sentences, we learned that Aaron was not interested, nor was he able to participate in the rituals of the community. He couldn't begin to contemplate or orchestrate the necessary details, the next steps for the ceremony for dedicating the tabernacle. So Moses directed Aaron's 2 younger sons to assume the older brother's positions so that the ceremony could go on. In the week since we read of that harrowing demise of Nadav and Abihu, We've been reading about the life of the Israelites as they traveled in the desert. We've been reading laws that they were to follow during their travels. In particular, the laws that pertain to the priests, Aaron and his descendants. We've read list after list of responsibilities that they had to follow to ensure the purity, the holiness, and the health of the community and its members, as well as every precinct within the camp, including the Holy of Holies. And then curiously, this week, after focusing on all of that minutia, this week's parashah begins by reminding us, when the narrative picks up again, about Aaron's reality, and therefore the reality of the entire community. It's still being defined by the deaths that still loom large for him, the deaths that have reset Aaron's sense of time, reset his understanding of himself in the world. Time for him is now divided into two categories, before and after the death. Many of us have known the disorienting feeling of rising from Shiva, and though intellectually we've known it's true, we are startled to learn that the world has gone on without us. And while we may want to jump right back in, it's impossible, no matter how hard we try. We realize that we knew how to function in the world as we'd known it before the death. But we have yet to fully understand what it means to live in the world after the death. We're also reminded, sometimes on a daily or hourly basis, that this before and after, which are dominating our reality, don't have shared meaning for most of the people in our world, even our immediate world, never mind the world beyond. It's this stranger in a strange land sensation of feeling strongly an inner rhythm and flow of time with its own unique meanings that we're aware is not shared by most of the people in our world, that many of us have felt since October 7th. We've approached each holiday with the spoken or unspoken truth that this is our first Hanukkah, our first Purim, our first Pesach since October 7th. And we don't quite know what to do or how to hold the after-death awareness that's still with us, and hold that with the normal moods and messages of the holidays. As we've participated in these familiar rituals, some of us have found ourselves noting to ourselves or to others, for some reason these words just don't resonate with me this year. Or that line, it took my breath away. Or the feeling that it's never been quite like this. True, for us, it has never been like this before. After the death and during the period of continuing chaos and confusion and loss of countless innocent lives, we are reminded repeatedly in stunning and unsettling ways that our internal time machines, as well as the meanings we derive from them, are beating to a rhythm that's radically different from the ones we have known and loved. In contrast, I've been noticing that this disconnect I've felt with recent holidays is not present for me as I anticipate Yom HaShoah, which begins on Sunday night. Its mood and focus feel far more aligned with our current after-the-death reality. On Yom HaShoah, together we will take time to name and share and honor those who were brutally and intentionally murdered during the Shoah. in that holy time and space after the death will be our shared reality. We will affirm that after the death has no time limit. It is a reality that we live with but experience differently over time. And paradoxically, by gathering, we will recognize our ongoing identities as those who are living after the death. Living after the death, not being a part of it. While in the immediate aftermath of a loved one's death, we, like Aaron, know what it's like to be unable to re-engage in daily activities. And yet, in retrospect, we come to understand that a time came, at different paces for each one of us, when living after a death became our task. Ready or not, we were called on, as Aaron is in the remainder of this week's parashah, to understand the obligations we still had to ourselves, to our loved ones, to our communities, and to God. After death, especially after death, when it may seem least attainable, our Torah readings remind us that we're called on not to just exist, not merely to live, but to live to our fullest potential. This week's Parsha, Acharei, is followed by Parshat Kedoshim, whose opening words are, "You shall be holy, for Adonai your God, I, Adonai your God, am holy." As beings created in God's image, even in the wake of the death of a loved one or the planned deaths of members of our people, even when we feel least able to do it, we're reminded, we are exhorted to live lives filled with as much holiness as we can bring, with as much holiness as we can find, so that we might continue to contribute to making the world a holier, more meaningful place. No matter the different modes we use to count time, we're each called on to make every possible effort to ensure the life, the time, the days we have count. Shabbat Shalom.